Hello, this is Anna Laura Brown, host of the Autoimmune Rehab podcast, where we talk about how to actually thrive and heal your autoimmune condition rather than just covering it up with pills or changing your diet and hoping you'll feel better one day. We feature solo episodes on helpful topics and interviews with guests who have actually walked in your shoes with autoimmune disorders and/or who have years of experience in helping people to thrive and not just survive with autoimmune challenges. I'm a health coach who started this podcast because I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's in 2018 and wanted to inspire hope and transform health for people with autoimmune challenges. So keep listening and let's get you the help you need and the hope you really need. This is the Autoimmune Rehab Podcast. Today's guest, we actually have Heather, who calls herself the Lyme boss. So, as I'm sure she will explain, there's a direct connection with her story there. So, keep listening to learn more about how that works. So, welcome to the show, Heather. Why don't you start off by telling us a little bit about yourself?
Awesome. Thank you for having me. Yeah, so I'm start at the beginning real quick. I was basically born full of shit, right? Like how many of you people can remember being constipated at like a really early age, right? Sitting on the potty for so long that my feet would fall asleep. And that's kind of what started my relationship with let's throw band-aids at symptoms, right? Let's throw thick, nasty oils down our throat and stool softeners, but not try to figure out why this 4-year-old was so constipated. Turns out my uncle had committed suicide that year. There was a lot of childhood trauma, and it kicked off my celiac disease. And I was eating a SAD diet, right? A standard American diet. So it was this perfect storm, accumulating. I also have crappy detox genes. Sadly, I don't detox properly. Like I said, I wasn't pooping. And then, being raised by addicts, a lot of childhood trauma. So by the time I was a teenager, we had moved to Missouri. My mom had divorced my dad for his brother. That could be like a whole episode of Jerry Springer all on its own. But there was a lot of trauma, right? So when I got bit by a tick, I was the perfect host, right? Not everybody who gets bit gets Lyme disease. You usually, just like with autoimmune stuff, there's certain things in play years before symptoms sometimes start happening. And so I had a leaky gut, which caused leaky brain. I had a lot of accumulation of toxins from being constipated for so long. I had celiac disease. I was starting Hashimoto's, early childhood trauma. So again, it was just this perfect storm. So I developed Lyme disease. I did start showing symptoms till about 2 years later when I was 15, when I ended up in the psych ward for the first time for a suicide attempt. First of many, unfortunately. It's pretty common in the Lyme world because it causes so much inflammation, especially on the brain. Lyme is one of those funny ones where it doesn't kill you fast; it kills you nice and slowly, and it's very common. Suicide rate in Lyme disease folks is really, really high because they start to lose perception, reality. They don't, they lose hope because they've been gaslit by the medical society for so long. The medical establishment just within this last year recognized the disease that I had for over 20 some years, right? Finally recognized it, the CDC, chronic Lyme. And so this whole time, I've been gaslit. And when you don't think that you have hope, right? When people tell you it's all in your head and that your lab results look normal, that's when things become dark and scary because really you don't really know where to turn. So that's why I love doing stuff like this. And I love, hearing your podcast and you sharing your story and what motivated you, because all too often too, even with Hashimoto's, so many doctors still, it's these prescriptions and you're going to be on them for the rest of your life. Bullshit. I reversed my Hashimoto's, and I see people do it on a regular basis. It can be done.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it absolutely can be done. And yeah, you're right. There's just a lot of garbage that goes out there, unfortunately, in the so-called healthcare system. I don't really call it a healthcare system. I call it a sick care system because that's basically what it is.
Amen, sister.
Just a lot of myths out there, like things like I even hear people say, and they'll ask me, "Oh, well, I don't have a thyroid anymore, so my Hashimoto's must be gone, right?" And it's like, no, that isn't how you get rid of it. You don't get rid of disease by removing the disease part of your body. And yet, unfortunately, some doctors still even think that. And it's like, no, that isn't how it works. So yeah, that's really too bad that you had to go through all of that. But obviously, you've put yourself in a really good position to be able to help a lot of other people because of what you've been through. And I take it you probably didn't know you were celiac even back at age 4. That was
No.
probably a whole journey in and of itself to find that out too. So when did you find out you had celiac disease?
My son, age 2 weeks before his second birthday, we're at a restaurant and it's like the middle of spring. That's not, I think it's right around, oh no, it's around his birthday. So it's 2 weeks before October. And it's not really like cold or flu season, right? And he's looking at me and I'm like, you don't look so great. And he's like, I want to go to the bathroom. I take him to the bathroom. And he just projectile vomits all over the floor. And I'm like, well, that's odd because, like I said, this is not flu season. What's going on? So we take him in, x-ray him, and his belly had been distended for so long, the muscles actually separated like a pregnant person. And he had lost about 10 pounds in 2 weeks. And for a 2-year-old, that's a lot. So he had like these little chicken legs and these little chicken arms. You could count his ribs and this great big distended belly. And they're like, they take an x-ray and they're like, oh, he's massively constipated. Okay, cool. Why? Right. And again, throwing band-aids to symptoms, let's put him on Miralax. And so we did that route for a couple of months and it got a little bit better, but not much. And finally, it was my mom, who's a nurse, thank God, said, Heather, he keeps complaining of his belly hurting. That's not normal. You need to continue to knock heads until someone listens to you. And finally someone listened to me, and it didn't take long, thank God. But it was this practitioner from Children's Hospital walked in and took one look at him and went, I think he's got celiac disease. And I was all, silly, huh? Like, never heard that term before in my life. So he got diagnosed at celiac at the age of 2, and that was back in 2005. So still pretty early in the curve there of the gluten-free stuff.
Mhm.
And it still even took like another, I want to say 10 years before I got diagnosed, because I think I was in a little bit of denial. Um, I knew that it was a genetic component to this child. I've had gut issues my whole life, but yeah, it took me about another 10 years after he got diagnosed before I finally was like, oh, I'm probably celiac too.
That's probably part of my problem. That's why is I keep eating the gluten even though I know I shouldn't. Yeah.
Yep, yep, yeah, yeah. I didn't dive further into that until I became a functional practitioner. So after getting diagnosed with Lyme disease, the doctor just was throwing napalm at me, right? Because sadly, a lot of folks, even the Lyme literate doctors, they just focus on treatment. And so he was throwing these heavy anti-duty antibiotics, anti-malarials, all and herbs in with it, in a body that hadn't worked properly in over 3 decades, right?
Yeah.
He never once asked me if I was pooping, what my stress level was like, if I was sleeping, what my diet was like. Just started attacking this critter, and for the first time in my life, I thought I was going to die. It was horrible. And then that's when I heard the founder. I was a hairstylist at the time, so I didn't have a medical background. My mom was a nurse, my grandmother was a nurse, so there is some of that kind of like runs in my blood. But I heard this, the founder of FDN, which is the certification I have, his name's Reed Davis, and he was on Sean Croxton's podcast called Underground Wellness, back in 2012. And he's talking about how you got to open up the detox pathways and you got to balance the hormones and heal the leaky gut. And oh my God, this just intuitively, I was like, this is it. This is it. And at the time, the program was $1,500. I was like the third graduating class, I think. Now it's like an $8,000 program and it's totally worth it. But I had to beg my ex-husband for me to take it because part of it is you get to do a couple functional labs on yourself as a guinea pig, right? You become your first
Yeah.
patient. And so, yeah, it turned out I had blastocystis hominis, which is a very common parasite, especially with people who have pets, right? I'm an animal lover, and I would get horrible, distended belly pain after I ate anything. It didn't no matter what I ate. And then it also showed a little bit of the malabsorption. So the celiac stuff, I had overgrowth of candida. My liver was congested. My hormones
Oh
were
my gosh.
in the tank. Like, I don't know how the hell I was functioning, but it was
Yeah.
phenomenal. Like, what a gift, right? I now have like answers to the boogeyman.
Exactly. Yeah. So you find out basically that you have all these at once. I mean, you knew you had Lyme a little bit before that, but then you all of a sudden get this windfall, if you will, of all this stuff that's going on. What was the very first thing that you did to start that detox process?
So it was getting detox pathways opening up. So first and foremost, making sure that I was pooping. So I love, like, if I could rebrand right now, I'd love to rebrand as the detox boss or, something along those lines, because especially with chronically ill people, mold folks, Lyme folks, MCAS folks, a lot of times we have some crappy detoxing genes. And I'm no stranger to that. And when you don't poop, especially, like, people don't realize how absolutely toxic that is for you. If you're not going daily, you're becoming toxic. And so in FDN, their big claim in the beginning was coffee enemas. And I was just like, I'm sorry, you want me to do what? And I swear, after the first one that I did, it was like instantly, it was like the brain fog had lifted. It was incredible. And I would talk about it to anybody who would listen. We were like at a 4th of July party, and the person sitting next to me, and I'm talking about coffee enemas. I thought my husband was like going to crawl underneath the table in embarrassment, but I was just like, it just brought me so much relief, and the coffee enemas actually help detox the blood. They help detox the gallbladder. The gallbladder dumps the bile. Like, it's got so many different processes that's happening with the detox function of this coffee enema that it's just ridiculous on a whole nother level. And so in the beginning, they were having us do them 3 to 5 times a week. And I did that for 3 months. And then now, 7, 8 years later, I'm still doing one a week. Like, it's still part of my detox regimen because I still don't detox properly. And I know that if I let my detox bucket, right, some of us may have heard this, that we're all born with a detox bucket. Some of us have a little tiny bucket. Some of us have a really big bucket. I have a thimble. Right. So it doesn't take much to overfill my detox bucket. And then I start getting inflamed. I start gaining weight. I get the brain fog back. I can't sleep. Like, it's a whole mess. So detoxing was the first thing. And then so making sure I was peeing, pooping, and sweating. So then sauna was the next thing to add to that list. And people don't realize that there's an actual art to doing a sauna correctly. And I didn't realize that in the beginning either. I would get in it and I'm like, well, shit, I'm not sweating. So I must need to be in here longer. Right. And then I would make myself sick. And I learned, that taking binders beforehand, skin brushing beforehand, and actually, like anything, if you've got chronic illness, going low and slow to begin with. So 5 minutes for a couple of days, and then 10 minutes for a couple of days, and then 20 minutes for a couple of days. And now I do 30 minutes daily with no issues, but it took me months to really, where my body would start to sweat. And God love my body. Now it starts to sweat a little too easy. Like, if I get a little nervous or if I'm out in the sun, it's just like instantly. And I was like, oh, thank you for the detox. And, I'm sweating my makeup off. Like, can we please not right now? So those were the 2 big things that I put into place in the beginning.
That's awesome. That's interesting. Yeah, I had one other guest mention the coffee enemas, and it's actually not something I've ever tried, but maybe someday. I think I actually detox pretty easily though, and I actually do 30 minutes a day of infrared sauna too, and
Wow.
I've become a really big fan of it.
Love
It's
it.
had a big impact on my healing and health too. I tell people that, and they're just like, what? Are you sure? And I also tell people that people sometimes think that that means you have to go buy a big cedar one and have an extra bathroom in your house and everything else. And these days there's a lot of really good portable ones. And that's what I did is I bought a portable one, and mine's actually in my bedroom. So.
I started off with a sauna blanket, and I did that for 3 years before I could afford a portable one. And then I just, moved up to a relaxed sauna, and it's in my spare bedroom. And now I will never, ever, ever, ever be without a sauna in my life, because it just made that much of a difference. And people, if you're dealing with mold and trying to detox mold, like, a sauna is usually one of the first things I have people get, because it's one of the first lines of defense of moving, heavy metals, toxins, mold out of your body.
Yeah, well, my experience has been too that I've had it for about 14 months. I've had mine now, and I have not been sick the entire time.
Oh,
Like,
that's awesome.
I have yet to get a single cold, flu, nothing since I got my sauna.
That's
So,
awesome.
it's definitely helped with not getting sick either, despite the fact that tons of people I know are sick, and I'm like, my sauna's the magic key. That's the
How
reason
funny.
I've not been sick. We'll see how
I
long I
love
keep
it.
going, but yeah, that's cool. So as far as the coffee enema thing, how does somebody get started doing that kind of thing? Is that something that you have specific training on how to do? Because I know that, of course, people could go Google it and that kind of stuff, but
I
What do
did
you recommend?
partner with somebody. Oh, I can't say partner. I just refer. And so there's a lot of things I'm an affiliate for. This one's I'm not. But on my website, if you go to the resource section at the very bottom, there's a coffee enema kit. And she is just a wealth, optimal health, I believe is what it's called. But she's got all kinds of videos of how to and why and starter kits and like everything liver, coffee enema support that you could possibly imagine. So I'm like, I am not going to recreate the wheel. I'm just going to point people in the direction of somebody who's already done it. Because yes, I've thought about making my own video series and doing that whole thing. And I was just like, no, I'm just going to point people to her. So that's usually where I have people get started. And if they have, if I'm working with them and they have questions, then of course I can kind of help troubleshoot because there's a learning curve for sure.
That's cool. That's awesome. Yeah. So we will for sure link to your website and we'll give people, directions on how to find that because I'm sure that's going to be a common question that people are wondering about. How do you actually do that? Okay. And then the other thing you also brought up was talking about binders. So what do you feel like? Let's talk a little bit more about binders and what are the role that those play in like detox and healing from things like Lyme and that kind of stuff.
Man, it's another controversial conversation. It seems like everything about me is, it seems to swing that way. Um, I I use a lot of cell core binders. It's a lot of humic and fulvic, and their binders are a little bit different in the fact that you can actually take them with food and other supplements, not around prescriptions. Um, which makes it really handy because if you're taking a regular binder, you're supposed to 2 hours away from food and supplements front and back, so if you got to wait 2 hours after you eat, take the binder, then wait another 2 hours. And that could be a nice little chunk of time. And people a lot of times just don't want to think about it or even set their timer on their phone, which I think makes it really easy. But there's a lot of beautiful binders out there these days. But like I said, a lot of humic, fulvic. I mean, even something as simple as activated charcoal, especially I don't take them as much anymore, only when I'm actively working on somebody who's in mold, who's got some sort of an infection going on. Because you can overdo it and overbind minerals, and that puts us in a whole nother problem, right? We need our minerals, we need our electrolytes, we need our vitamins. And so, I was noticing when I overbind, my nails get really thin and brittle, and it's like, oops, I've been overdoing the binders again. So I back off, and now I only do, so like I said, I do the sauna. I used to do the sauna only 3 times a week, and then one of those days I would pair it with a coffee enema, and so I'd only do the binders 3 times a week. Now I'm only doing a binder once a week with the coffee enema because it releases toxins into the system sometimes, and those binders help suck up those toxins and move them out of your system. Um, when I travel, I'm starting to use more binders because I'm running into more and more moldy motels when I travel.
Mhm.
So I've partnered up with a air filter company that's been ridiculously amazing. They've got these little portable air filters that use ozone. Um, but between that and then the binders and glutathione, it's been helping keep me safe when I'm out in the world because I don't want to be bubble girl, but I am a bit of a canary in a coal mine because, like I said, my toxic bucket is like a thimble, and I don't mean to be like a Karen when I'm out in public, but if you're wearing a lot of perfume or you're smoking cigarettes, it actually makes me really ill. And so, I'm not trying, like I said, not trying to be an ass, but it's just there's a lot of people out there who are sensitive to this stuff these days, and these binders and detoxing really help get them feeling better faster.
That's awesome. That's interesting. Yeah, and I bring that up primarily because I'm sure that can still help some people. And I know a few people that have had Lyme that I know used binders, but it's fortunately for me, I've not experienced Lyme, and so that's not something that I've had to use. So I'm not, personally super familiar with it, even though I'd heard that terminology being used for Lyme before. So that's
Yeah,
cool.
lime, mold, heavy metals are all things that you typically would use binders for. Or if you're
Cool.
doing an anti-parasite or anti-candida protocol, because anytime you kill stuff off, they have a tendency to release toxins into the system. And then themselves, their dead selves in your system can cause a lot of inflammation as too. So sometimes these different binders, because there's a lot of different binders that are made to bind different things too. So it's not just typically a one size fits all. So yeah, so it depends on what you're working on what kind of binders you want to use.
Sure, absolutely. And I'm sure you have some resources on that. We can link to those as well in the show notes so people can take a look at. So that brings up an important point. What kinds of warnings or symbols should somebody watch out for if somebody starting the detox to make sure that they don't overdo it, like you said, and all of a sudden cause more problems maybe than what they had before?
Yeah, so in the Lyme world, there's something called a Herxheimer response or a Herx response. It can happen with anything. It's just a healing crisis where we've killed stuff off too fast, faster than our body can get rid of it, so it makes us sick. And a lot of symptoms could be like flu-like symptoms, headaches. It's not fun. And sometimes, so it's going low and slow, no matter what it is you're doing. So like with the coffee enemas, I'm up to 3 tablespoons of coffee per enema bucket, but I didn't start off that way. I started with half a teaspoon of coffee, and slowly worked my way up. I started off slowly in the sauna and slowly worked my way up to 30 minutes. It's the same thing with the binders. If a max dose is 3, you want to start off with 1, but moving slowly. And sometimes there still might be a little bit of a Herx response. And I tell people sometimes the only way out is through. And a lot of people get scared the minute they get any kind of a side effect and they back off. And it's like, but they could have more momentum if they kept going. Now, if it's knocking you on your butt and you're not able to function, no, that's not the level we're needing to work at. But if you're starting to feel a little sick, a little queasy, I got a little headache, don't back off. Like I said, sometimes the only way out is through. And within a couple days, a week of continuing, a lot of times things will get better. But I've had way too many clients that like the minute a hint of a side effect came about, they would back off. And so we never were able to move to that next level because the only way out is through. Like I said, unless you're absolutely laid out. That's not what we want. You're overdoing it, right? So there's a balance, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good point because I know that can happen because I have done candida cleanses and things like that before, and that can happen like especially if you're having like any kind of like a candida that you're having to kill off. I mean, yeah, there's going to be some side effects and they're not going to be super pleasant. You are going to be a little bit sick, but yeah, I mean, that's just kind of part of how life works. So, what
Absolutely.
else do you feel like somebody should know about detoxing or about Lyme that is maybe something that's not commonly put out there?
So I mentioned skin brushing, and so that's something that you can do before you get into a sauna, or it's just something that you can do even daily because our lymph, right, is our detoxing fluid throughout our body, and our lymph only moves when we're moving. And a lot of times, like, what are we doing right now? We're sitting on our butts in front of our computer. Right. So our lymph is not moving as much as it should. And so you can get on Amazon and look up dry skin brush, and it just kind of looks like a brush, like a horse brush, like you'd brush a horse with. I grew up with horses, so that's what it looks like to me. And then there's a specific way. Some people say that you're supposed to start at the top and go down. I've read everything that you're supposed to start at the bottom and move up, towards the heart. But it's literally brushing dry skin, getting the lymph moving, right? And so if you do that before you get into people with a history of breast cancer, right? Bending over to where your breasts are kind of hanging and brushing them to help move the lymph. But it also will help generate more sweat. Like I noticed when I just get into my sauna compared to when I have the time to dry brush beforehand, like completely different experience in the sauna. So dry brushing is another inexpensive. That's what I love about detoxing is because most of it is not that crazy expensive and doesn't take a whole lot of time. But it does take a little forethought. It takes some planning. So dry brushing and then Epsom salt baths. First off, though, making sure that you have a filter on your shower head. So many people are focused on their filtered water and they're so proud of themselves with their filtered water. And then I ask them, do you have a filter on your shower head? And they go, no. Do you know how many chemicals we absorb through our skin every time we take a shower? And most of us are taking warm showers, which means our pores are more open, which meaning we're actually absorbing more chemicals. Same thing. You can get on Amazon, $45 and buy a decent shower head. Again, I've got resources on my website for that as well. But so I'll take that shower head. So I put up a different one where you can kind of take the shower head off, and I'll take the shower head off and just let it hang. And I fill my bathtub up with that filtered water. So that way I'm not sitting in a bunch of chlorine and fluoride. Like I'm defeating the purpose of detoxifying if I'm sitting in a bathtub full of chlorine and fluoride. And
Yeah, that's a good point. And you're right. I think a lot of people don't think about that, you know.
no,
Yeah.
almost every single person I work with, that's why I bring it up here, is because it's one of those little things, right? That I see patterns really easily, and I can put the whole picture together. And I think that's why people like working with me, is because these little nuggets, right, that are just a tweak, but it really helps tie in a whole person's program. So filling up your bathtub with the filtered water from the shower head. And I use 4 cups of Epsom salt, and I know the bag says 1 to 2. Trust me, try it with 4 and you'll be a believer. So 4 cups of Epsom salt, and I usually do a half a cup of baking soda along with that, because that helps, alkalinize everything. And if you're inflamed and you're in pain, it really can help with that. Also makes your skin nice and soft. But you talk about detox, so a little bit of hot water, those 4 cups of Epsom salt, ooh, it's a great way to detox. And for those of us with chronic illness, there's usually a component of being empathetic and taking on other people's energies. And so grounding really helps dissipate that. And that's the other reason why I love Epsom salt baths, is because when you're grounding in a mineral bath, magnesium bath, it also helps kind of clear out the energies of others and EMFs and stuff on your body as well. So there's multiple amazing factors to taking Epsom salt baths.
That's great. Those are some good tips. I don't think I've actually ever even tried it with 4 cups. I've always done, like 2 cups, and I haven't added the baking soda, so I'll have to try that. That's cool.
And if you really want to take it up a notch, if you've got essential oils, I just recently became a doTERRA person, and I've been putting Serenity in the into the Epsom salt before I put it into the bath. And oh my gosh, it's like takes you to a whole nother place.
Serenity is a good one. I like eucalyptus. I'm really big into doTERRA essential oils too, but Balance is a good one. Another one that's a doTERRA blend for those that are listening and don't know what the blends are. You can contact one of us. But yeah, yeah, for sure. Absolutely. That's great. So I'm assuming the best way for somebody to get in touch with you then would be your website that will have that linked below. And you can tell us exactly what that is. Is that limeboss.com? Yeah,
TheLimeBoss.com.
thelimeboss.com.
And
Okay.
that's Lyme, not lime like we're making a margarita.
Yeah, it's Lyme, like the illness, like that
Yep.
we've been talking about. And then we'll put some of your socials below too, like Instagram or Facebook or wherever you're at online. We'll put those as well too, so people can.
Everywhere. It's Lyme Boss everywhere. Can't miss it.
Cool, awesome. And any other last words of wisdom of anything that we missed?
One other little fast, easy one that's fairly inexpensive, that's very powerful, are castor oil packs. And so the castor oil plant, its original name in Latin actually translates to palm of God. And so if you think about, you're putting the palm of God over your liver and how amazing that is for detox. I use something called Queen of the Thrones castor oil packs, and that's on my website as well on the resource section. And it's funny, it looks like a giant maxi pad with elastic strings, so you can actually wear it overnight, and it can help with constipation, with sleep, balancing hormones, detoxification. She's came out with a couple other packs that you wear around your neck to help with thyroid and Hashimoto's. You can wear it around your abdomen if you're having period pain or gastrointestinal issues. Like you can put the castor oil on your eyebrows and on your eyelashes and on your hair, ladies, and it's incredible. Like I can't get over the way my eyelashes look since I started using the castor oil directly. So that's another detox hack that is fairly inexpensive, that is just, it has been a game changer, especially with my history of constipation. So I still use my castor oil pack 3 nights a week. And then, like I said, I put it on my face, and it's horrible how I look when I go to bed, because I'm just all shiny, goopy, but in the morning I look nice and fresh and beautiful. So it's worth it.
There you go. That's awesome. Yeah, I've used the castor oil packs too as well, and yeah, they definitely have helped me too. So yeah, that's awesome.
And I know we talked a lot about stuff to detox the body, but really the easiest way to start detoxing and not getting a Herx response too fast is detoxing your environment, right?
Oh,
So
yeah.
we talked about essential oils, so getting, your fragrances, the cheap fragrances, the Febreze, the Glade plugins, the scented candles, the scented laundry detergent, the fabric softener, that stuff. And it can seem overwhelming at first. And I tell people, give yourself a year to detox your environment, right? So like when you run out of your aluminum deodorant, trade up to an aluminum free deodorant. When you run out of your scented candle, get a doTERRA account and start using a diffuser, so a lot of our personal care products, lotions, shampoo, conditioner, all this stuff, our skin is our largest organ, and whatever we put on our skin gets absorbed into our system within 20 minutes. So if you don't recognize an ingredient, neither does your body. If you can't pronounce it, your body doesn't recognize it either, and it causes inflammation. It causes all kinds of havoc. So that's the number one way to start detoxing, is really start detoxing your environment. The laundry detergent, if you think about it, again, our skin, uh, transdermal patches, right? They work so well because how well things get through our skin. Well, if you've got this scented, nasty laundry detergent and fabric softener on your clothes, you're basically wearing a giant patch of that fake perfume toxic
Mhm.
crap on your body all day long,
Well,
right?
yeah, and things like getting rid of dryer sheets and using just wool dryer balls
I
instead,
love my wool
and
balls.
things
And then
like
you put
that.
some of the doTERRA on the wool balls and it's amazing.
You could, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's absolutely amazing. So yeah, so those are just some, give yourself a year to really make the change, because like I said in the beginning, I was so overwhelmed. I'm like, oh my God, the water filters and this filter and that filter and this and the air and the blah, but just take it one step at a time, and you'd be amazed that within a year how far you've come and how much you've changed in your environment.
That's awesome. I love that. And I think that's a great way to end. Just take it one step at a time. Don't get overwhelmed. Do one thing. Just pick one thing, be consistent, and try that one thing, and then add another thing and another thing. And over time, you'll gradually find that you are there. You've detoxed yourself and you start, like you said, pooping a lot more regularly, and you'll have a lot better digestion and health and everything else in every other aspect of your life.
Absolutely.